Mr. Director General, Ministers, Ambassadors, Excellencies, survivors, the heroes of our time, and friends. May I preface my remarks with a personal statement. Whenever I speak on the Holocaust, on the Shoah, I do so with a great degree of humility and not without a deep sense of pain. For I'm reminded of what my parents taught me while still a young boy, the profundity and pain of which I realized only years later, that there are things in Jewish history that are too terrible to be believed, but they're not too terrible to have happened. Oswiecim, Majdanek, Dachau, Treblinka, these are beyond vocabulary. Words may ease the pain, but they may also dwarf the tragedy. For the Holocaust was uniquely evil in its genocidal singularity, where biology was inescapably destiny, a war against the Jews in which, as Nobel Peace Laureate Professor Elie Wiesel put it, not all victims were Jews, but all Jews were intended victims. We meet at an important moment of remembrance and reminder, of witness and of warning, on the 62nd anniversary of the liberation of the death camps, on the 62nd anniversary of the disappearance of Raoul Wallenberg, with whose family I spoke just moments before this ceremony began. This hero of humanity, this saint just of the nations, this person whom the United Nations referred to as the greatest humanitarian of the 20th century, who stood up against the Nazi evil, who resisted, confronted, and showed that one person can indeed prevail, that one person can transform history, a role model for young people in our day. And on the eve of the 62nd anniversary of the founding of the United Nations, which, as former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan said, and I quote, emerged from the ashes of the Holocaust, and where, as he reminded us, and I quote again, a United Nation that fails to be at the forefront of the fight against anti-Semitism and other forms of racism denies its history and undermines its future. In the aftermath of the 60th anniversary of the Nuremberg Principles, the forerunner of what has come today to be known as international humanitarian and criminal law, reminding us also of the double entendre of Nuremberg, the Nuremberg of jackboots, as well as the Nuremberg of judgments, the Nuremberg of racism, as well as the Nuremberg of principles. And on the first anniversary of the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of the Holocaust, which is now being commemorated for the first time in this Salle des Assemblées, the venue of the gathering storm as it was then in the 30s, and which tragically was not averted, so that we may remember and be reminded, bear witness and heed the warning. Never again, not now, not ever, not for Jews, not for anyone. And so on this anniversary of anniversaries, on this day of days, some 60 years after the Holocaust, the birth of the United Nations and Nuremberg, we have to ask ourselves, what have we learned? And more importantly, perhaps, what must we also do? May I summarize now the universal lessons of the Holocaust, the lessons to be learned and the action to be taken. For as Kierkegaard put it, life must be lived forwards, but it can sometimes only be understood backwards. The first lesson is that of the importance of Zachor, of remembrance itself. For as we remember the 6 million Jewish victims of the Shoah, defamed, demonized, dehumanized as a prologue, if not justification, for the genocide, we have to understand that the mass murder of 6 million Jews and millions of non-Jews is not a matter of abstract statistics. For unto each person there is a name. Unto each person there is an identity. Each person is a universe. As our sages tell us, as an ambassador Lebanon said, that whoever saves a single life, it is as if they have saved an entire universe. And the converse is also true. Whoever kills a single person, it is as if they have killed an entire universe. And so the abiding imperative, particularly for the younger generation as for all of us, that we are each, wherever we are, the guarantors of each other's destiny. Lesson 2, the danger of state-sanctioned incitement to hatred and genocide, the responsibility to prevent. For the enduring lesson of the Holocaust is that the genocide of European Jewry occurred not only because of the industry of death and the technology of terror, but because of the state-sanctioned ideology of hate. It was this teaching of contempt, this demonizing of the other, this is where it all began. As the Canadian courts put it in affirming the constitutionality of our anti-hate legislation, and I quote, "The Holocaust did not begin in the gas chambers. It began with words. These, as the court put it, are the chilling facts of history. These, as the court put it, are the chilling effects of racism." 40 years later, in the 90s, these lessons not only remained unlearned, but the tragedy was again repeated. For we witnessed, yet again, a growing trafficking in state-sanctioned hate and incitement, which in the Balkans and in Rwanda took us down the road to genocide. And as we meet, we are witnessing yet again a state-sanctioned incitement to hate and genocide whose epicenter is Ahmadinejad's Iran. And I distinguish President Ahmadinejad from the people of Iran, many of whom have themselves repudiated his remarks. For President Ahmadinejad denies the Nazi Holocaust as he incites to a Middle Eastern one, an assault on Jewish memory and truth and justice in its denial of the Holocaust, which the UN General Assembly, as has been mentioned, adopted and a resolution condemning it by consensus several days ago, and a violation of the prohibition in the Genocide Convention against, and I quote, "the direct and public incitement to genocide," which UN Secretary Generals Kofi Annan and Ban Ki-moon respectively called shocking and unacceptable. Indeed, an assault on the very United Nations Charter which prohibits such incitement and threat.